Tonight, we're joined by Stephen Miller, a former White House advisor who has deep knowledge of immigration law and of this. Stephen Miller, thanks so much for coming on. So it is now beyond dispute that the Biden administration is moving very large numbers of foreign nationals who are here illegally into the interior of the country without the consent of the neighborhoods into which they're resettling them. Is that legal?
No, it is absolutely not legal. It violates a wide series of immigration laws that delineate in great depth the precise rules and conditions for how you can enter the country and how you cannot enter the country. That's why, in fact, my organization, America First Legal, just argued alongside Texas in federal court that these policies must be enjoined. But what I want to get across to your audience to really advance this story is to understand that what is happening now is unprecedented. And the whole conversation about border security up to this point in time has been wrong. This is not about an administration that is unable to protect the border. This is about an administration that in a very purposeful, planned, deliberate, painstaking fashion has turned our Border Patrol and ICE agencies into resettlement agencies. That is the word that everyone needs to know and repeat. This is a planned resettlement, the largest of its kind, I would suggest perhaps in the history of the world, in terms of the number of illegal border crossers being resettled into the interior of our country in violation of plain law. So there's very little, I mean, you have an organization that is using the law to try and stop this. It's happening in real time. It's been happening for 6 months without the knowledge of the 320 million American citizens whose country this is. But there is someone who can stop it, and that's Greg Abbott, who's the governor of Texas, who commands the Texas National Guard. And, of course, it's his border over which a lot of these people are coming. Why wouldn't he shut the border tonight with Mexico and stop this? Well, I would argue that the appropriate constitutional remedy is Article 4, Section 4, which says that the government clearly has the obligation to protect any state in this country against invasion and domestic violence. It does not say that that has to be in the form of a nation-state actor. In other words, the Constitution doesn't say it has to be a state-led invasion. It's any large-scale, unwelcome, uninvited entry into a country, or into a state. That would provide the constitutional predicate for exactly what you're describing. I would also suggest it would provide the constitutional predicate for the Supreme Court, if they had the moral courage, to strike down this entire scheme, which is a blatant violation of our entire constitutional Republican form of government. Let's be very clear. When Joe Biden put his hand on the Bible and swore an oath to take care the laws be faithfully executed, to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, to ensure a Republican form of government to every state, he has violated every single one of those commitments. I'll also add this. If that's not an impeachable offense, I can't imagine what would be.
No, that's right. And you know that this is core to their governing plans, because when you mention it, they go crazy and they call you the worst kind of slurs, when in fact, I don't think there is a large group of people anywhere in this country of any color, of any political affiliation, who is in favor of this. I mean, if people were in favor of this, why isn't there a bill in the U.S. Congress just to admit 1 million new foreign nationals every 6 months?
Exactly. I mean, why isn't there? What they are doing is they're doubling, tripling, whatever the number is at the end of the year. Who knows? It keeps going higher and higher and higher. There's no ceiling been hit yet. The number of migrants being admitted into our country every single year above the already sky-high levels authorized in federal law. And you're right, nobody's going out publicly, not Senator Manchin, not Senator Mark Kelly, not even Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, saying, America, here's why we think we need millions and millions and millions more migrants every single year than we already have. And by the way, if possible, we'd like them not to have health insurance, we'd like them not to have college education, and we'd like them to rely on large amounts of federal government benefits, including free health care services. Nobody's making that argument because nobody could make that argument because there isn't any principled argument for it, and there never could be. And to your point about race, Hispanic Americans, Black Americans, Asian Americans, white Americans, every category of American, and by the way, every person in every country in the world that has ever lived wants a secure border and a controlled immigration policy, period.
You must be a white supremacist. Yeah, it's about consent. Look, if we want to do this, let's tell the public, let's have a debate about it, let's do it democratically. They're doing it in the manner of an authoritarian government. They're just doing it and hurting you if you disagree. We're not putting up with it. Stephen, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.